Decolonization refers to the process by which colonies gained independence from European imperial powers, leading to the formation of new nation-states. This phenomenon took place primarily between 1945 and the 1990s, profoundly reshaping the political, social, and economic landscape of Africa and Asia. The decolonization process was influenced by a variety of factors, including the weakening of European powers after World War II, the rise of nationalist movements, the role of international institutions like the United Nations, and the geopolitical dynamics of the Cold War. The newly independent states faced numerous challenges, such as economic dependency, ethnic conflicts, political instability, and struggles over governance models. This essay explores the decolonization of Africa and Asia by examining key events, the emergence of new state forms, and the broader consequences of independence movements. Causes of decolonization. Several interrelated factors contributed to the rapid decolonization of Africa and Asia. 1. Impact of World War II. The war significantly weakened European colonial powers, both economically and militarily. The devastation left Britain, France, and the Netherlands struggling to maintain control over their vast colonial empires. In contrast, the United States and the Soviet Union emerged as global superpowers, both advocating, at least rhetorically, for an end to colonial rule. 2. Rise of nationalism. The interwar period had already seen the emergence of nationalist movements in Africa and Asia. The war accelerated these movements as colonial subjects contributed to the war effort, fighting alongside European forces and demanding political recognition in return. Leaders such as Mahatma Gandhi in India, Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, and Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya became prominent figures in the struggle for independence. 3. The role of the United Nations. The UN, established in 1945, promoted self-determination and condemned colonialism. Newly independent countries joined the General Assembly, putting pressure on colonial powers to grant independence to their remaining territories. 4. The Cold War and superpower rivalry. The ideological struggle between the United States and the Soviet Union played a crucial role in decolonization. Both superpowers sought to expand their influence in the newly independent states, often providing support to nationalist movements in an attempt to gain allies in the developing world. 5. Economic burden on colonial powers. Maintaining colonial rule became increasingly expensive. Britain, France, and other European nations faced financial crises after World War II, making it difficult to sustain their colonial administrations. The shift toward decolonization was also influenced by changing economic priorities, as European countries sought new forms of economic cooperation rather than direct control. The process of decolonization. The process of decolonization varied across different regions, with some countries achieving independence peacefully, while others had to fight prolonged wars of liberation. 1. Asia, the early wave of decolonization. Decolonization in Asia began earlier than in Africa, with India leading the way. India and Pakistan, 1947. The British withdrawal from India was marked by the partition into two independent states, India and Pakistan. This led to widespread violence with over 1 million people killed and millions more displaced. Indonesia, 1945 to 1949. Indonesia declared independence from the Netherlands in 1945, but the Dutch attempted to reclaim their colony, leading to a brutal 4-year conflict. International pressure eventually forced the Netherlands to recognize Indonesian sovereignty in 1949. Vietnam, 1945 to 1954. Vietnam's struggle for independence from France culminated in the First Indochina War, 1946 to 1954. The decisive defeat of French forces at Dien Bien Phu led to the Geneva Accords, which divided Vietnam into North and South. This set the stage for future conflicts, including the Vietnam War. 2. Africa. The second wave of decolonization. The decolonization of Africa gathered momentum in the late 1950s and continued through the 1970s. Ghana, 1957. Ghana, under Kwame Nkrumah, became the first African nation to gain independence from Britain, inspiring other African nationalist movements. Algerian War of Independence, 1954 to 1962. One of the bloodiest decolonization conflicts occurred in Algeria, where the National Liberation Front (FLN) fought a brutal war against French rule. After years of guerrilla warfare, Algeria gained independence in 1962. Congo Crisis, 1960 to 1965. The Belgian Congo's rapid decolonization in 1960 led to severe instability. Civil war, Cold War interventions, and the assassination of Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba plunged the country into chaos. Southern Africa, the struggle against settler colonialism. In countries like Angola, Mozambique, Namibia, and Zimbabwe, independence came after prolonged armed struggles against Portuguese, South African, and British colonial rule. The apartheid regime in South Africa lasted until 1994, marking the final stage of African decolonization. New state forms and challenges. With independence came the challenge of building new nation states. While some countries established stable governments, others faced authoritarian rule, ethnic conflicts, and economic dependency. 1. Types of governance. Democratic experiments. Countries like India adopted democratic governance with a strong parliamentary system and periodic elections. One-party states. Many African countries, including Ghana and Tanzania, embraced one-party rule under socialist models, often justified as necessary for national unity. Military regimes. Some nations, like Egypt under Gamal Abdel Nasser and Indonesia under Suharto, saw military takeovers that led to authoritarian rule. Monarchies. Some states, such as Jordan and Saudi Arabia, retained monarchical structures with varying degrees of political reform. 2. Economic challenges. Many newly independent nations struggled with economic instability due to their reliance on colonial-era economic structures. They faced challenges such as dependency on former colonizers. Many economies remained tied to former colonial powers through trade and financial aid. Resource exploitation. Some nations had valuable resources like oil, but foreign companies and elites often controlled profits. Structural adjustment programs. During the 1980s, institutions like the International Monetary Fund, IMF, imposed economic policies that often led to austerity and social unrest. Ethnic and regional conflicts. The arbitrary borders drawn by colonial powers led to ethnic tensions in many post-colonial states. Examples include the Nigerian Civil War, 1967 to 1970. The attempted secession of Biafra led to a brutal conflict with massive humanitarian consequences. Partition of India and Pakistan. Religious and territorial disputes led to conflicts like the Indo-Pakistani Wars and ongoing tensions over Kashmir. Rwandan genocide, 1994. Ethnic divisions exacerbated by colonial rule contributed to the genocide between Hutus and Tutsis. 4. Cold War interventions. The superpowers often interfered in post-colonial states, supporting rival factions in civil wars, coups, and insurgencies. Examples include the Vietnam War, 1955 to 1975, a Cold War battleground between communist and anti-communist forces. The Angolan Civil War, 1975 to 2002, a proxy war between Soviet-backed and US-backed factions. Afghanistan, 1979 to 1989. The Soviet invasion led to a prolonged conflict fueled by US support for Afghan Mujahideen fighters. Decolonization profoundly transformed Africa and Asia, leading to the emergence of new political systems, economic challenges, and social upheavals. While independence brought self-rule, many nations struggled with instability, economic dependency, and Cold War interventions. Despite these challenges, decolonization remains one of the most significant global transformations of the 20th century, shaping the modern world and influencing contemporary political and economic dynamics.